A female billionaire sat alone in her wheelchair, a small untouched birthday cake in front of her. Suddenly the door swung open and a black father and his little daughter stepped inside. Before anyone could react, the girl walked straight up to the billionaire's table and whispered, "Nobody should be alone on their birthday." Then something unbelievable happened. Right there in the middle of the cafe, the father and daughter began singing Happy Birthday, off-key but overflowing with warmth. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt her heart crack open. And what happened after that moment would change all three of their lives forever. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The rain came down hard over Seattle that November afternoon, the kind of relentless downpour that turned the city's streets into rivers of gray and made the world feel smaller, quieter, like everyone had retreated into their own private corners of loneliness. Inside the Daily Grind Cafe on Pine Street, the windows fogged with condensation and the air smelled of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon. Eleanor Hart sat alone at a corner table, her wheelchair positioned carefully beside the worn leather booth. She was 32 years old today, though she felt ancient, as if the accident 2 years ago had aged her in ways that had nothing to do with time. Her auburn hair fell in damp waves around her shoulders. She had wheeled herself here through the rain because her driver had called in sick and she had been too proud to ask anyone else for help. In front of her sat a small chocolate cake with pale buttercream frosting. The barista had written Happy Birthday in shaky cursive across the top when Eleanor had quietly mentioned it was her birthday. No candles, no songs, no one waiting for her at home. Eleanor traced a finger along the edge of the plate and thought about her mother. Sarah Hart would have been here, insisting they share stories and laugh until closing time, making Eleanor feel seen and loved and important. But her mother had died 18 months ago, 6 months after the accident, when Eleanor was still in the rehabilitation hospital learning to navigate a body that no longer obeyed her commands. Sarah Hart had been Eleanor's anchor through those darkest days, visiting every single day, holding her daughter's hand through painful physical therapy sessions, refusing to let Eleanor give up even when Eleanor begged her to. And then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, Sarah had a massive stroke in her sleep, gone before the ambulance arrived. Mercifully quick but devastatingly final. Eleanor's father, William Hart, founder and CEO of Hart Technologies, was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean right now, flying to Tokyo for a merger meeting he had deemed too important to postpone, even for his daughter's birthday. He had sent flowers, expensive impersonal roses delivered by a service with a card that read Happy Birthday, Eleanor. Sorry I can't be there. Dad. Eleanor had stopped expecting him to show up years ago. She stared at the cake and felt the familiar weight of isolation pressing down on her chest. The accident had stolen her mobility, or most of it. The doctors called it incomplete spinal cord injury, which meant the nerves in her lower spine were damaged but not completely severed. She could feel pressure, sometimes pain, occasionally even sensation in her legs, but controlled movement remained elusive, unreliable. Some days she could wiggle her toes, other days, nothing. The wheelchair was necessity, not choice. She was the youngest self-made tech billionaire in America, at least, that was what Forbes had called her 3 years ago, before the fall. She had built Hart Technologies' cloud infrastructure division from nothing, had pioneered accessibility features that made technology usable for people with disabilities, had been interviewed on national television about innovation and leadership. And now she could not remember the last time she had felt anything other than numb. The cafe door chimed, and Eleanor glanced up reflexively. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket, followed by a little girl in a bright yellow raincoat who bounced through the door like a beam of sunshine breaking through storm clouds. The girl, no older than 7, had rich brown skin, her hair pulled back in 2 neat puffs decorated with colorful beads that clicked softly as she moved. She clutched something in her small hands, holding it carefully against her chest to protect it from the rain. The man beside her was tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of quiet strength that came from years of physical work. His skin was a deep brown, his hair cut close with hints of gray at the temples, and his eyes, warm and attentive, tracked his daughter's every movement with the vigilance of someone who had learned that the world required constant watchfulness. They ordered hot chocolates at the counter, and the little girl Lily Eleanor heard the man call her, chattered excitedly about something she had made in art class. Her voice carried across the cafe, bright and musical, and despite herself, Eleanor found a small smile tugging at her lips. Then Lily turned, and her eyes landed directly on Eleanor. Before her father could stop her, Lily skipped across the cafe, her yellow raincoat swishing, and stopped beside Eleanor's table. She held out what she had been protecting, a slightly damp crayon drawing of a cat wearing a party hat. "Excuse me, miss," Lily said, her voice serious and sweet. "Is today your birthday?" Eleanor blinked, caught off guard. Yes, it is." Lily's face broke into a radiant smile. "I knew it, I could tell. Can we sing for you, please? Nobody should be alone on their birthday." The man Marcus, Eleanor would learn later, appeared beside his daughter, his expression apologetic. "Lily, sweetheart, we don't want to bother, please," Eleanor said, the word escaping before she could stop it. Her voice cracked slightly. "Please, I'd like that." Marcus met her eyes, and in that brief moment, Eleanor saw something that made her chest tighten, recognition, not of who she was, but of what she was feeling. He understood loneliness. He understood what it meant to need kindness desperately and be too proud to ask for it. He nodded once, then pulled out a chair for Lily. The little girl climbed up, positioning herself importantly, and cleared her throat like she was about to perform at Carnegie Hall. "Ready, Daddy?" Lily asked. "Ready," Marcus replied, his deep voice warm, and then they sang. Off-key and unpolished, with Lily's enthusiasm carrying them through the verses and Marcus's steady bass providing foundation. Other customers glanced over, some smiling, others looking away with the practiced indifference of city dwellers who had learned not to engage. But Eleanor could not look away. She watched this little girl and her father sing happy birthday to a complete stranger, asking for nothing in return, simply offering joy because they believed everyone deserved it. Lily's beaded hair ornaments clicked in rhythm with the song. Marcus's hand rested gently on his daughter's shoulder, anchoring her, protecting her, letting her shine. When they finished, Lily clapped her hands together. "Make a wish." Eleanor closed her eyes. She did not believe in wishes anymore. But she tried anyway, letting herself hope, just for a moment, that maybe life could feel less empty. When she opened her eyes, tears were streaming down her face. Lily's smile faded instantly, replaced by concern. "Oh no, are you sad? Did we make you sad?" Eleanor shook her head quickly, wiping at her cheeks with trembling fingers. "No, sweetheart, no, you made me happy. This is the most wonderful thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." Lily reached across the table and patted Eleanor's hand with the solemnity of someone far older than 7. "Good, because birthdays should be happy days. That's the rule." Marcus offered Eleanor a napkin from the dispenser. "I'm sorry if we overstepped." "You didn't," Eleanor said firmly, accepting the napkin. "Thank you, both of you. I'm Eleanor." "Marcus, right," he replied, his handshake gentle but firm. "And this is my daughter Lily. Would you?" Eleanor hesitated, then pushed forward, taking a risk she had not taken in 2 years. "Would you both like to share this cake with me? It's too much for one person." Lily's eyes went wide with delight. "Really, we can?" "I'd be honored," Eleanor said. They sat together for the next hour, sharing chocolate cake and stories. Lily told Eleanor about her school play where she was playing a sunflower, about her art teacher who let them use real watercolors, about her favorite book series involving magical horses. Marcus spoke less, but when he did, his words were thoughtful and kind. He asked Eleanor about her work. She kept it vague, mentioning technology consulting, and did not ask about the wheelchair, did not let his gaze linger on it with pity or curiosity. He treated her like a person, not a tragedy, and that simple act of respect meant more than he could possibly know. When they finally stood to leave, Lily hugged Eleanor impulsively, wrapping her small arms around Eleanor's neck. "Happy birthday, Miss Eleanor. I hope all your wishes come true." Eleanor held the little girl close, breathing in the scent of rain and children's shampoo, feeling something crack open inside her chest, something that had been sealed shut since her mother's death. "Thank you, Lily," she whispered. "Thank you both." As they left, Lily waved through the rain-streaked window until they disappeared around the corner. Eleanor sat alone at her table again, but the loneliness felt different now. Lighter, like maybe, just maybe, she could survive it after all. She wheeled herself home through the rain, and for the first time in 2 years, she went to bed on her birthday feeling something other than despair. She felt hope. 10 days later, Eleanor was leaving her weekly art therapy session at the Riverside Community Center when the rain started again, not the gentle drizzle Seattle was famous for, but a sudden aggressive downpour that turned the afternoon dark as evening. She had been making progress in therapy, both physical and emotional. The sessions focused on adaptive arts, painting with modified brushes, sculpting with tools designed for limited mobility, and they had become one of the few things she looked forward to each week. Her therapist, Dr. Patricia Morrison, kept telling her that healing was not linear, that some days she would feel strong, and others she would want to give up entirely, and both were okay. Today had been a strong day. Eleanor had painted a landscape, mountains and sky, and the suggestion of a climber silhouetted against the sun. She had not painted anything since the accident. But Lily's words kept echoing in her mind, nobody should be alone on their birthday. And somehow, that simple truth from a 7-year-old had unlocked something in Eleanor, had made her want to try again. Now she sat at the top of the center's entrance ramp, watching the rain hammer down, knowing that even with her all-terrain wheelchair, navigating the slick sidewalks back to her apartment 6 blocks away would be treacherous. She was debating whether to call her assistant, admit defeat, admit need, when a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Lily running toward her, yellow raincoat bright against the gray afternoon, her father following close behind, with an umbrella in one hand, and concern etched across his features. Lily, Marcus. Eleanor felt her face break into a genuine smile. What are you doing here? Art class, Lily announced proudly, holding up a folder that was already getting damp despite Marcus's attempts to shield it. I made a painting of our cat. Well, we don't have a cat yet, but Daddy says maybe for my birthday. Marcus reached them, immediately positioning the umbrella to cover both Eleanor and his daughter. We take classes here every Tuesday, he explained. I didn't know you came here too. Art therapy, Eleanor said. It's part of my recovery process. Understanding flickered in Marcus's eyes, but he did not press. That's great. How are you getting home in this weather? Eleanor glanced at the rain, then back at her wheelchair, then at the 6 blocks of uneven Seattle sidewalks stretching between her and home. Very carefully, she said with false brightness. Marcus crouched down so he was at eye level with her, his expression serious. Eleanor, I don't mean to overstep, but those sidewalks are going to be really slick. Would you let me help? I can push your chair while Lily holds the umbrella. We'll get you home safe. Pride warred with practicality in Eleanor's chest. She had spent 2 years learning to be independent, refusing help, insisting she could manage everything alone because depending on others felt like admitting she was broken. But something about Marcus's offer felt different. He was not looking at her with pity, he was not assuming she was helpless. He was simply offering assistance the way any decent person would in a rainstorm, the way he probably would have offered to help anyone struggling in bad weather. Okay, Eleanor said quietly. Thank you, I'd appreciate that. Lily cheered and immediately took charge of the umbrella, holding it with both hands above Eleanor's head like she was protecting royalty. Marcus moved behind Eleanor's wheelchair, his hands firm and steady on the handles. Just tell me if I'm going too fast, or if you want to stop, he said. They made their way through the rain together, Lily chattering about her art class and asking Eleanor questions about her painting, Marcus navigating the sidewalks with careful attention to every crack and puddle. When they encountered a particularly steep section where the sidewalk had buckled from tree roots, Marcus paused. I'm going to tilt the chair back slightly to get over this part, he said. Is that okay? The fact that he asked, that he treated her as someone with agency over her own body, made Eleanor's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Yes, that's fine, she managed. He lifted the front wheels smoothly, guiding her over the obstacle without jarring her, then continued forward. They moved in companionable silence for a while, the rain drumming steadily on the umbrella, Lily occasionally humming snatches of songs from her school play. When they reached Eleanor's building, a modern apartment complex with views of Elliott Bay, Marcus pushed her chair under the covered entrance and stepped back, shaking rain from his jacket. "Thank you," Eleanor said, meaning it more than she could express. "Both of you. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out," Marcus said simply, "but I'm glad we could help." Lily handed Eleanor a slightly damp drawing she had pulled from her folder, the painting of the imaginary cat. "For you, to remember us." Eleanor accepted it carefully, holding it like the treasure it was. "I'll hang this in my apartment. Thank you, Lily." As they turned to leave, Eleanor found herself calling out, "Marcus, wait." He paused, looking back. "I was wondering." Eleanor took a breath, making another choice, taking another risk. "Would you and Lily like to come to the center's Family Art Day next Saturday? They're doing a collaborative mural project. I'm helping coordinate it, and I thought Lily might enjoy it." Marcus's expression softened. "We'd love that. Wouldn't we, Lily?" "Yes." Lily bounced on her toes. "Will you be there, Miss Eleanor?" "I will," Eleanor promised. That night Eleanor hung Lily's cat painting on her refrigerator, the first piece of art she had displayed in her apartment since the accident. She stared at it for a long time, at the bright colors and the slightly wobbly whiskers and the obvious joy in every brushstroke. She made herself tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights reflect off the rain-soaked streets below. And she thought about Marcus and Lily, about their kindness, about the way they had shown up for her twice now, without asking for anything in return. Over the next few days, Eleanor found herself thinking about them constantly. Not in a romantic way. Marcus felt more like a brother, someone who understood struggle without needing words. But she was curious about their story, about how a man carrying such obvious burdens could still radiate such kindness, about how he was raising such a remarkably compassionate child. She told herself she was being practical, if she was going to offer Marcus a professional opportunity, and the idea had been growing in her mind since that rainy afternoon, she needed to do due diligence. Hart Technologies had protocols. She would be asking her father and the board to take a risk on someone without traditional credentials. But deeper than that, she wanted to understand. Wanted to know if her instincts about Marcus's character were right, or if her isolation had made her naive and too trusting. So one evening, she opened her laptop and began with public records, business registrations, permits, nothing invasive, just information any potential employer might review. And what she found changed everything. Marcus Wright had owned a construction and restoration company called Wright Building and Restoration. Eleanor found the business registration dated back 14 years with a registered address in the Georgetown neighborhood. She pulled up archived versions of the company website and felt her breath catch. The work was extraordinary. Marcus had specialized in historic building restoration, churches, Victorian homes, commercial buildings from Seattle's early days. The photographs showed meticulous attention to detail, respect for original craftsmanship, and innovative solutions that honored the past while meeting modern building codes. Testimonials from clients praised his integrity, his skill, and his commitment to community. One particularly moving review came from a church congregation. "Marcus Wright didn't just restore our building, he restored our faith in what was possible. He listened to our stories, honored our history, and gave us a space that serves our community while preserving the legacy of those who built it a century ago. He's not just a contractor, he's an artist who works with wood and stone." Eleanor kept digging, and the timeline began to emerge. 8 years ago, the projects had stopped abruptly. No new contracts, no updates to the website, just silence. She cross-referenced dates and found the reason in probate records that made her chest tighten with grief. Jasmine Marie Wright, age 31, had died of breast cancer, leaving behind her husband Marcus and daughter Lily, age 2. The medical expenses listed in the estate documents totaled $87,412, debt that had transferred to Marcus after her death. Eleanor sat back from her computer, her hand pressed against her mouth. She thought about Marcus pushing her wheelchair through the rain, about Lily's bright smile, about how hard he must be working to shield his daughter from the weight of that loss, that debt, that crushing burden. She kept searching, and what she found next made her blood run cold. Over the past 6 years, Marcus had applied for positions at 17 different construction and restoration firms throughout the Seattle area. Eleanor found his name in business journals, in industry newsletters, in application databases that were supposed to be confidential but that her assistant Caroline could access through professional networks. Marcus had been interviewed for 12 positions. According to the records Eleanor could piece together, he had been offered jobs 3 times, and each offer had been rescinded within days, with vague explanations about budget changes, or going in a different direction, or finding a candidate who was a better cultural fit. Eleanor knew corporate doublespeak when she saw it. She had built a billion-dollar company from nothing. She understood how discrimination hid behind polite language and professional excuses. She pulled up Marcus's professional portfolio, still available on an archived version of his website. The projects documented there were stunning. He had restored a Victorian home in Capitol Hill, preserving original crown molding and hardwood floors, while completely modernizing the plumbing, electrical and HVAC systems. He had renovated a warehouse in Sodo, transforming it into affordable live workspaces that honored the building's industrial history while making it accessible and energy efficient. One project in particular caught Eleanor's attention, the Georgetown Community Church restoration. Marcus had not just repaired the building, he had researched its history, interviewed congregation members about their memories, and incorporated design elements that reflected the community's heritage. He had trained local teenagers in traditional plastering techniques, giving them marketable skills while preserving craftsmanship that was being lost to time. Marcus Wright was not just a skilled contractor. He was exactly the kind of visionary leader that Hart Technologies needed for the Historic Preservation Division. Eleanor had been planning for months, and he had been systematically denied opportunities because of the color of his skin. Eleanor closed her laptop, feeling sick. She thought about her own journey, how she had been given chance after chance, how investors had believed in her ideas even when they were unproven, how one failure had never defined her entire career because people who looked like her always got second chances, third chances, endless chances. Marcus had not been given any of that. Despite exceptional qualifications, despite proven success, despite glowing references, he kept hitting walls that were invisible to people who had never had to see them. She thought about Marcus pushing her wheelchair through the rain, asking permission before every adjustment, treating her with such careful respect. She thought about Lily's bright smile and innocent joy, about how hard Marcus must be working to shield his daughter from the cruelty of a world that judged people before knowing them. And she thought about her own resources, the millions sitting in investment accounts, the Hart Technologies empire her father had built, the connections and power she had been ignoring for 2 years because she had been too consumed by her own pain to look outside herself. Eleanor opened her laptop again and began drafting an email to her assistant Caroline. Caroline, I need you to schedule a meeting with me to discuss launching the Historic Preservation and Adaptive Building Division we've been planning. I want to move forward immediately. I also need you to start drafting a job description for Director of Historic Preservation. I'll send you specific qualifications, but I already have a candidate in mind. This is important to me. Let's make it happen. Eleanor she hit send before she could second-guess herself, then sat in the dim light of her apartment, Lily's cat painting glowing cheerfully on the refrigerator. If Marcus Wright could show kindness to a stranger on her birthday, could help her without knowing who she was, or what she could offer in return, then Eleanor could damn well use her privilege to open doors that should never have been closed in the first place. She was not rescuing him. She was offering what should have been his all along, a fair chance. The Family Art Day at the Riverside Community Center was controlled chaos in the best possible way. 30 children and their parents crowded around a massive blank wall in the center's main activity room, armed with brushes, rollers, and enough paint colors to make a rainbow jealous. Eleanor had positioned herself near the project coordinator's table, officially there to help manage supplies, but really just enjoying the energy, the laughter, the creative arguments about whether the mural should include dinosaurs or unicorns. The compromise was a unicorn, riding a dinosaur, the pure uncomplicated joy of creation.
Lily had arrived in paint-splattered overalls, her hair protected by a bright red bandana, ready to work. She had immediately claimed Eleanor as her painting partner, and they had spent the past hour working on a section featuring flowers and butterflies, Lily providing the vision while Eleanor helped with the higher sections she could not reach from her wheelchair. Marcus worked nearby, helping younger children who could not quite manage the big brushes, wiping up spills, and keeping a watchful eye on Lily while giving her space to be independent. During a break for snacks, Eleanor wheeled herself over to where Marcus stood by the window, watching Lily show another little girl how to blend colors. "She's wonderful," Eleanor said. "You're raising an incredible kid." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that was equal parts pride and exhaustion. "She's better than I deserve, keeps me going on days when I'm not sure I can." "I looked you up," Eleanor said quietly, deciding honesty was better than pretense. "I'm sorry, that was invasive." Marcus glanced at her, surprise flickering across his face, then nodded slowly. "It's public record, and I get it, you're cautious, you should be." He paused. "What did you find?" Eleanor chose her words carefully. "I found someone with exceptional talent, who's been denied opportunities he earned. I found someone who's carrying a burden that would crush most people but is still showing up for his daughter every single day, and I found someone who helped a stranger in the rain without expecting anything in return." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on Lily across the room. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to offer you something," Eleanor said. "But I need you to hear me out before you say no. Can you do that?" "Okay," Marcus said cautiously, turning to face her fully. Eleanor took a breath. "My full name is Eleanor Hart. My father is William Hart, founder of Hart Technologies. I built the cloud infrastructure division before my accident. We're launching a new division focused on historic preservation and adaptive building, restoring old structures while making them accessible for people with disabilities. It's personal to me for obvious reasons." She watched Marcus's expression shift from confusion to understanding to something that looked like pain. "I need someone to lead the division," Eleanor continued. "Someone who understands both the technical side and the human side of making spaces work for everyone. Someone who respects history and community, not just profit margins. I've seen your work, Marcus. I've read testimonials from your clients. You're not just qualified, you're exactly what this project needs." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Eleanor."
"Before you say no," she interrupted, "I need you to understand something. This is not charity. I'm not offering you this position because I feel sorry for you or because you pushed my wheelchair in the rain or because I found out about Jasmine and the medical debt." Marcus flinched slightly at his wife's name. "If I wanted to help you financially out of gratitude or pity," Eleanor said gently, "I could write you a check right now. I could pay off your medical debt today. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a job because you're qualified and I need someone with your specific expertise." She leaned forward intently. "Will my personal respect for you influence this decision?" "Yes, but that's true of any hiring. We work with people we trust. You've shown me your character. Now I need you to show me your capabilities." Marcus was silent for a long time, emotions warring on his face, hope battling with suspicion, desperation fighting pride. "I need to ask you something," he said finally, his voice rough. "And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay," Eleanor said. "Is this because you feel sorry for me? Because you found out about Jasmine, about the debt, about all the jobs I didn't get?" His voice cracked slightly. "Because I can't take charity, Eleanor. I can't accept something I haven't earned. It'll destroy me. It'll teach Lily the wrong lessons about what matters in life." Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "Marcus, I understand why you're asking. And I respect that you need to know this is real. So here's the truth. Yes, I looked into your background. Yes, I know about the doors that have been closed in your face, and yes, that made me angry. Not at you, but at a system that's broken." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But I didn't offer you this job because I feel sorry for you. I offered it because after reviewing your portfolio, your references and your approach to restoration work, I realized you're the most qualified person I can find. You have technical expertise, community relationships, and a vision that aligns perfectly with what I'm trying to build." "What about my lack of corporate experience?" Marcus asked. What about the fact that I've been freelancing for years because no one would hire me full-time? What about it? Eleanor countered. Corporate experience means knowing how to navigate bureaucracy and politics. You have field experience, which is more valuable. You know how buildings actually work. You understand craftsmanship. You've managed projects, budgets, and teams. That's what I need. She gestured around the community center. Look at what you're doing right now. You're teaching kids, supporting their creativity, showing up for your community. That's leadership, Marcus. That's the kind of person I want leading this division. Marcus looked at Lily, who was now helping a younger child reach a high section of the mural, her face serious with concentration. There's one more thing you should know, Eleanor said quietly. This won't be easy. My father will question this decision. The board of directors will scrutinize you more than they would scrutinize anyone else. Some people will assume you got the job because of diversity initiatives or because I feel guilty about something. You'll have to work twice as hard to prove half as much. She let that sink in. I can't protect you from all of it. I can advocate for you, support you, and make sure you have the resources you need. But you'll face resistance, and it won't be fair. Marcus was quiet for what felt like an eternity. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Why are you being so honest with me? Because you deserve honesty, Eleanor said simply. And because if you take this job, I need you to go in with your eyes open. This is a real opportunity, but it comes with real challenges. Marcus studied her face, searching for something, deception perhaps, or hidden motives. Finally he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Here's what I need. I need to start with a trial period. 3 months, maybe 6. A smaller project where I can prove myself before anyone commits to a permanent position. That way, if I'm not the right fit, we can both walk away with no hard feelings. And that way, I'll know I earned whatever comes next. Eleanor felt relief wash through her. He was not rejecting the offer. He was shaping it into something he could accept with dignity and tact. That's fair, she said. How about this 6 to 8 months one restoration project as proof of concept? If it goes well, which I know it will, you'll get a full contract with benefits and a salary of $95,000 annually, plus project bonuses. Marcus's breath caught audibly. Eleanor knew that number represented freedom, the ability to pay off medical debt, to provide for Lily, to stop living paycheck to paycheck. When would I start? He asked carefully. Come to Heart Technologies next Monday, Eleanor said. I'll introduce you to the team and show you the trial project. It's a historic theater in Pioneer Square that needs restoration. Significant enough to showcase your skills, manageable within 6 to 8 months. Monday, Marcus repeated, as if testing the word. But Marcus, Eleanor added, I need you to promise me something. If you take this job, you have to let yourself succeed. Don't sabotage yourself by assuming you don't belong, or that you're not good enough. You are good enough. You've always been good enough. The system was just rigged against you. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then extended his hand. Okay, yes, I'll do it. I'll prove myself, Eleanor. Every single day, I won't let you down. Eleanor shook his hand firmly. I know you won't, that's why I'm offering. Lily chose that moment to run over, paint splattered and beaming. Daddy, Miss Eleanor, come see. The dinosaur unicorn is done. They followed her back to the mural where indeed a magnificent purple unicorn rode atop a green dinosaur through a field of wild flowers. It was chaotic and joyful and absolutely perfect. It's beautiful, Lily, Eleanor said sincerely. Lily grabbed both their hands, pulling them close to the mural. We all made it together. That's what makes it special. When everyone helps, it's better. Eleanor and Marcus exchanged a look over Lily's head. A silent acknowledgement that this 7-year-old had just articulated something profound about collaboration, community, and the power of working together. When everyone helps, it's better. Eleanor decided to make that the unofficial motto of the new division. Marcus started at Heart Technologies on the first Monday of December, arriving 45 minutes early because he had barely slept and did not want to risk being late. He wore his best suit, the charcoal one he had bought for Jasmine's memorial service 6 years ago and had not worn since. It still fit, though the shoulders were a bit tight now from the physical labor of construction work. He carried a worn leather portfolio containing his designs, photographs of past projects, and letters of recommendation from architects and historical societies who had praised his work back when Wright Building and Restoration was still operational. The Hart Technologies building in downtown Seattle was all glass and steel, modern and imposing, and Marcus felt profoundly out of place as he walked through the marble lobby. Security directed him to the 8th floor, where the new Historic Preservation and Adaptive Building Division was housed in a suite of offices that smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. Eleanor met him at the elevator, using forearm crutches now, progress she had texted him about excitedly over the weekend. She wore a navy blue suit, and her hair pulled back in a professional bun, looking every inch the CEO she had once been. "Ready?" she asked, her smile warm despite the formal setting. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Good," Eleanor said. "That means you care. Come on, I'll introduce you to the team." She led him to a conference room where 5 people waited around a long table, 2 architects, 2 project managers, and 1 structural engineer. Eleanor made introductions, and Marcus shook hands with each person, carefully noting the varying degrees of welcome in their expressions. Some seemed genuinely interested. A younger architect named James actually smiled with real warmth and said, "I've heard great things about your Georgetown church restoration. That plasterwork was incredible." Others wore polite masks that barely concealed skepticism. A woman in her late 50s named Diane, one of the senior project managers, offered a brief handshake and a neutral welcome aboard. The elephant in the room was obvious. Marcus was the only black person present, and the only one without a corporate pedigree or an advanced degree from a prestigious university. His biography, printed in the folders Eleanor had prepared, listed his education as Seattle Community College Construction Management Certificate, and 14 years field experience in historic restoration. Everyone else around the table had degrees from the University of Washington, MIT, or Cal Poly. Marcus comes to us with over 15 years of hands-on restoration and building experience, Eleanor began, positioning herself at the head of the table. He's worked on historic preservation projects throughout the Seattle area, including the Georgetown Community Church restoration, the Capitol Hill Victorian renovation, and multiple residential projects that have won preservation awards. He's going to lead our trial project, the restoration of the Paramount Theater in Pioneer Square. Diane's eyebrows rose slightly. The Paramount has been on preservation lists for years. It's a complicated project, significant structural damage, extensive water intrusion, completely outdated systems. Are you confident you can handle the technical complexity, Mr. Wright? There it was. The first challenge, wrapped in professional concern but carrying unmistakable doubt. Marcus had prepared for this. He opened his portfolio and pulled out a preliminary assessment he had prepared over the weekend, after Eleanor had sent him the building survey reports and photographs. "Ma'am, I understand your concern," he said calmly. "The Paramount presents multiple challenges. The foundation has settled unevenly on the south side, causing structural stress. There's extensive water damage to the decorative plaster moldings on the interior. The electrical system hasn't been updated since the 1960s and isn't up to current code. The HVAC system is non-existent." He slid his notes across the table. "But I've dealt with similar issues on other projects. The Georgetown Church had worse foundation problems, and we stabilized it using helical piers that didn't damage the historic masonry. For the Paramount, I'm proposing a similar approach, combined with interior bracing that can be hidden behind existing architectural features." Diane leaned forward, scanning his notes. Her expression remained carefully neutral. "What I bring to this project," Marcus continued, "is direct hands-on knowledge of historic restoration techniques and a commitment to preserving the building's character while making it functional, safe and accessible for everyone. I'm not just interested in meeting code requirements. I want to honor what this theater meant to the Pioneer Square community and what it could mean again." James, the younger architect, nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly the approach we need. Too many preservation projects focus only on aesthetics and ignore functionality, or vice versa." Another team member, a structural engineer named Robert, spoke up. "Mr. Wright, your approach to the foundation work makes sense, but I'm concerned about timeline. How long do you estimate for a project of this scope?" 6 to 8 months, Marcus said, "assuming we can secure the necessary permits within 4 weeks and don't encounter major unforeseen issues. I've built contingency time into the schedule for unexpected complications, which are inevitable with buildings this old." "And budget?" Diane asked.
Marcus pulled out another document, a detailed cost estimate he had worked on until 3 in the morning. 1.2 million, including materials, labor, permits, and a 15% contingency fund. I'm proposing to hire local craftspeople where possible and train apprentices in traditional techniques. That keeps costs down while investing in the community and preserving skills that are being lost. Eleanor smiled. As you can see, Marcus has done his homework. The meeting continued for 2 hours, reviewing the Paramount's condition reports, discussing accessibility requirements, and debating various approaches to preservation versus modernization. Marcus contributed throughout, asking questions that revealed his technical knowledge, offering suggestions that showed his understanding of both the practical and philosophical challenges of historic restoration. By the end, the skepticism in the room had softened slightly. But Marcus knew he had a mountain to climb to earn their full trust. After everyone filed out, Eleanor remained behind. That was excellent, she said. You held your ground without being defensive, and you backed up everything with evidence. Marcus rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. Did I talk too much? I felt like I was trying too hard to prove myself. You were thorough, Eleanor said firmly. There's a difference, and Marcus, Diane is going to be your biggest challenge. She's been with the company for 20 years, and she doesn't like change. But she respects competence. Show her you know what you're doing, and she'll come around. And if she doesn't, Marcus asked quietly. Then we deal with it, Eleanor said. But one step at a time. For now, focus on the Paramount. The building will speak for you. 3 weeks into the Paramount project, Marcus spent entire days at the abandoned theater, walking through dust-filled hallways, examining the ornate plasterwork that was crumbling in places, studying the building's bones to understand what it needed. The theater had been built in 1928, during Seattle's boom years before the Great Depression. It had hosted vaudeville acts, silent films, jazz performances, and eventually rock concerts before closing in 1996 when the owner died, and the heirs could not afford the maintenance. The building had good bones, solid brick construction, beautiful Art Deco architectural details. But decades of neglect, and several bad patch jobs by contractors who had not understood historic preservation had taken their toll. Marcus developed a restoration plan that was both respectful of the building's history and practical for modern use. He proposed repairing the foundation using minimally invasive techniques that would not damage the historic structure. He designed a new HVAC system that could be hidden behind existing decorative soffits. He planned to restore the original plaster moldings rather than replace them with modern alternatives. And critically, he incorporated accessibility features throughout, ramps that blended with the Art Deco aesthetic, an elevator disguised within a restored service shaft, accessible seating areas that did not compromise the theater's historic floor plan. Historic preservation and accessibility don't have to conflict, he explained during a design presentation to Eleanor and the team in mid-December. They can enhance each other. A building that serves everyone is a building that will survive and remain relevant. But resistance came from unexpected places. Diane questioned his timeline repeatedly, insisting he was being too optimistic despite Marcus's detailed scheduling and the contingency time he had built in. You're proposing to train apprentices in traditional plastering techniques, she said, during one meeting, her tone skeptical. That will slow down the work significantly. Wouldn't it be more efficient to hire experienced plasterers from established firms? More expensive, Marcus countered calmly. And it misses an opportunity to invest in the community. There are young people in Pioneer Square who need marketable skills. Teaching them traditional craftsmanship gives them career paths while preserving techniques that are disappearing. That's part of what makes this project meaningful. Another team member, an architect named Brad, who was only a few years out of graduate school, openly mocked Marcus's emphasis on community input during a planning session. We're not running a democracy here, Brad said dismissively. We're delivering a project on time and under budget. We can't stop for community meetings every time someone has an opinion about paint colors. Marcus bit back frustration and spoke carefully. This theater belongs to the Pioneer Square community. They have memories here, first dates, family celebrations, cultural events that shaped their lives. If we restore this building without their input, we're just imposing our vision on their space. but if we involve them, we create something that actually serves them. That's the difference between a successful project and a beautiful building that sits empty. The tension simmered for weeks, occasionally boiling over in meetings where Marcus found himself defending not just his plans, but his right to be in the room at all. Meanwhile, Eleanor was fighting her own battle. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, she attended physical therapy at the Riverside Rehabilitation Center. Dr. Patricia Morrison had designed an aggressive treatment plan focused on rebuilding strength in Eleanor's legs and retraining her nervous system to communicate with muscles that had forgotten their function. The work was agonizing. One Thursday in mid-December, Eleanor gripped the parallel bars so tightly her knuckles went white. Her legs trembled beneath her, muscles that had forgotten how to bear weight now being asked to remember. "Just 10 seconds, doctor," Morrison said from beside her, one hand hovering near Eleanor's back ready to catch her if she fell. "You're doing beautifully." Eleanor counted through gritted teeth, 1, 2, 3, 4. At 5 seconds her left leg buckled. She caught herself on the bars, breathing hard, sweat pouring down her face, despite the cool temperature of the therapy room. "That's further than last week," Dr. Morrison said encouragingly. Eleanor wanted to scream. Last week she had made it to 4 seconds. 1 second of progress, after 7 days of agonizing work, after hours of painful exercises, after pushing her body past every limit. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're already doing it," Dr. Morrison replied gently. "Recovery isn't linear, Eleanor. Some weeks you'll gain ground, some weeks you'll plateau or even backslide, but the overall trajectory is upward. You're standing for 5 seconds without any assistance. 2 months ago you couldn't stand at all." Eleanor lowered herself back into her wheelchair, her entire body shaking with exhaustion. "It's not enough, it's everything," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "Every second you stand, you're rebuilding neural pathways, you're teaching your body to remember. This is how healing happens, not in dramatic moments, but in small patient accumulation of tiny victories." That evening, Eleanor sat in her apartment, body aching, spirit low. She stared at Lily's cat painting on her refrigerator and felt tears burning behind her eyes. 2 years of this, 2 years of fighting for every inch of progress, of celebrating victories so small they felt meaningless, of wondering if she would ever feel whole again. Her phone rang. "Marcus, hey," he said, his voice warm. "Lily wanted me to call. She made you something at art class today." "That's sweet," Eleanor managed, trying to keep her voice steady. There was a pause. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" And she told him, about the parallel bars, about the 5 seconds, about feeling like she was trying to climb a mountain that kept getting steeper with every step. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he spoke quietly. "After Jasmine died, I spent 3 months barely able to get out of bed. Lily was 4 years old, she needed breakfast, needed to get to preschool, needed her father to be functional, and I could barely move. The grief was so heavy I felt like I was drowning in it every single day." He paused, and Eleanor heard him take a shaky breath. "One morning, about 4 months after the funeral, I managed to make Lily toast without burning it. Just toast, and I stood there in the kitchen, holding this plate of slightly brown bread, and I cried. Because it felt like this massive victory. I had managed to feed my daughter, I had done one thing right." "What did you do?" Eleanor asked softly. "I celebrated the toast," Marcus said simply. "I stopped measuring myself against who I used to be, the guy who ran a successful business, who had his wife beside him, who had plans and dreams and a future that made sense. I started celebrating who I was becoming, a father who showed up every day, who made toast, who put one foot in front of the other even when it hurt." He let that settle, then continued. 5 seconds is incredible, Eleanor. Next week, maybe it'll be 6. Or maybe it'll be 4 again, and that's okay too. You're still trying, you're still fighting. That's what matters. Eleanor felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I'm tired, Marcus, I'm so tired of fighting." "I know," Marcus said gently, "but you're not fighting alone anymore. That's what friends do. We remind each other that progress isn't pretty, but it counts. We celebrate the toast and the 5 seconds and every tiny victory, because those tiny victories add up to something bigger than we can see right now." After they hung up, Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror, still in a wheelchair, still dependent on others for many daily tasks, still far from the woman she had been before Eagle Ridge, but also stronger than last month, braver than last year, trying harder than she'd tried in 2 years. That night, she marked 5 seconds standing on her calendar in bright red marker, small victories, but victories nonetheless. The confrontation came in early January, during a presentation to the Full Heart Technologies Board of Directors. Marcus had prepared meticulously for weeks, creating detailed architectural renderings, cost analyses, and timeline projections. He had incorporated feedback from the team, had refined his accessibility designs based on consultations with disability advocates, had built relationships with Pioneer Square community leaders to ensure their input was reflected in the restoration plan. He stood before 15 board members in the company's executive conference room on the 20th floor, 14 of them white, all of them wealthy, all of them looking at him with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. William Hart sat at the head of the table, a stern man in his early 60s with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that came from decades of being obeyed without question. He had returned from Tokyo 3 days earlier and had not yet met Marcus in person. Eleanor sat to her father's right, her forearm crutches, leaning against her chair, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes encouraging when they met Marcus's. "Mr. Wright," William began, his voice formal. "Please proceed with your presentation." Marcus took a breath and began. He walked them through the Paramount's history, its architectural significance, the current state of deterioration. He explained his restoration approach, how he would stabilize the foundation, repair the plasterwork using traditional techniques, modernize the building systems without compromising historic character, and integrate accessibility features seamlessly throughout. He showed them budget projections that came in under the original estimate. He showed them timeline schedules that included community input sessions. He showed them his plan for training local apprentices in restoration techniques, creating a skilled workforce while completing the project. When he finished, there was polite applause. Then the questions began, sharp and probing, each one feeling like a test he had not been told he would have to take. One board member, a real estate developer named Thomas, leaned forward. "Mr. Wright, your plan is ambitious, but you're proposing to hire local craftspeople, many without formal restoration training. Wouldn't it be more efficient and less risky to contract with established firms that specialize in historic preservation? More expensive," Marcus countered calmly, "and less meaningful to the community. Part of this project's value is creating opportunity training the next generation of preservation specialists right here in Seattle. That's an investment that pays dividends beyond this single building." Another board member, a woman named Patricia, who ran a venture capital firm, interrupted. "But Mr. Wright, time is money. Training inexperienced workers will slow down the project. How can you guarantee you'll meet your timeline when you're essentially running a job training program alongside a major construction project?" Marcus pulled up another slide, a detailed breakdown of his training approach. "The apprentices won't be learning on critical path work. They'll train on non-structural elements under supervision of master craftspeople. The timeline accounts for their learning curve, and the result is a community of skilled workers who can maintain this building and others like it for generations." The questions continued, each one more pointed than the last, until finally, a board member named Harrison, an older man who had made his fortune in commercial development, spoke up. "Mr. Wright, let me be direct." His tone was not hostile but carried unmistakable condescension. "You have an impressive technical portfolio, but this is a multi-million-dollar project that will be highly visible. Some of us have concerns about whether someone with your background has the management capacity and professional polish to handle something of this magnitude." The room went dead silent. Marcus felt blood rushing in his ears, felt every eye in the room on him, judging, measuring, finding him wanting not because of his competence, but because of assumptions about what competence was supposed to look like. The word background hung in the air, its meaning unmistakable. Not his education, not his experience, his race. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Eleanor spoke from her seat at the table, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to stop you right there. Her tone was ice cold and absolutely controlled. What exactly about Mr. Wright's background concerns you? His 14 years of successful restoration work, his proven track record of completing projects on time and under budget, his deep relationships with the communities whose buildings he restores. Harrison's face reddened slightly. I simply meant, you meant that he didn't go to the right schools or come from the right corporate background. Eleanor interrupted. Let me be very clear, Mr. Wright has presented a comprehensive, thoughtful and financially responsible restoration plan. The concerns you're raising have nothing to do with his technical capability and everything to do with bias.
She looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. If you have legitimate questions about the project specifics, ask them. But if your hesitation is based on assumptions about Mr. Wright's capacity to lead based on his race or socioeconomic background, then you need to examine where those assumptions are coming from, because they have no place in this company or this decision. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Several board members looked down at their papers. Harrison's face had gone from red to pale. William Hart, who had been silent throughout, raised his hand for quiet. He looked at his daughter with an expression that Marcus could not quite read, surprise perhaps or reassessment. Then he looked at Marcus. Mr. Wright, William said slowly, I've reviewed your portfolio extensively over the past week. I've spoken with people who have worked with you. I've read testimonials from community members whose buildings you've restored. The work speaks for itself. He paused and the room held its breath. The question before us is not whether you're qualified. You clearly are. The question is whether we trust our own judgment in hiring you, and I'm inclined to trust it. He looked around the table. We brought Mr. Wright here to do a job. Either we support that decision or we don't. I'm supporting it. William met Marcus's eyes. The plan is sound. The budget is reasonable. I'm approving this project to move forward with Mr. Wright as project lead. All in favor? Slowly, some reluctantly, hands rose around the table. 12 in favor, 2 abstentions. 1 opposed, Harrison, whose face remained carefully blank. Motion carries, William said. Mr. Wright, you're authorized to proceed. I expect regular progress reports and full transparency about any challenges. Understood? Yes, sir, Marcus managed, his throat tight. Thank you. Don't thank me, William said. Thank my daughter for having the courage to call us out on our blind spots. And then go prove that her faith in you was justified. After the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Marcus found Eleanor in the hallway outside the conference room. She leaned against the wall on her crutches, looking as drained as he felt. Thank you, Marcus said quietly, for speaking up. I shouldn't have had to. Eleanor replied, anger still simmering in her voice. You shouldn't have to prove yourself twice as hard just to be given basic respect. But I do, Marcus said. That's reality, and I knew that going in. Eleanor looked at him with something like anguish. It's not right. No, Marcus agreed. But you know what? I'm going to restore that theater, and it's going to be extraordinary. And every time someone walks through those doors, someone in a wheelchair, someone who needs accessible seating, someone from the Pioneer Square community, they're going to see what's possible when we choose to trust each other and judge people on their actual capabilities. That's worth fighting for. Eleanor studied his face, then nodded slowly. You're right. But Marcus, you're not fighting alone. We're partners in this, and I won't let them dismiss you again. As January turned to February and then March, the Paramount restoration progressed steadily. Marcus worked 60-hour weeks, splitting his time between the construction site and Hart Technologies offices, managing his team of contractors and apprentices while documenting every decision for the progress reports William Hart had requested. The work was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. Marcus was doing what he loved, bringing a beautiful old building back to life, and for the first time in years he was being fairly compensated and genuinely respected for his expertise. Well, mostly respected. Diane remained skeptical, questioning his decisions in meetings and asking for additional documentation that no one else had to provide. But Marcus persevered, answering every question with patience and backing up every choice with evidence. And slowly, grudgingly, Diane's skepticism began to soften. One afternoon in mid-March, Marcus was at the Paramount supervising the foundation work when Diane arrived unexpectedly for a site inspection. She walked through the building carefully, examining the repairs, checking the work against the plans, asking detailed technical questions. When she finished, she found Marcus in what had been the theater's grand lobby, now stripped down to bare walls and floors awaiting restoration. "The foundation work is solid," she said without preamble. "Better than I expected, honestly. The helical piers were the right choice." Marcus felt surprise and relief in equal measure. "Thank you. I appreciate you saying that." Diane nodded, then hesitated. "Mr. Wright, I owe you an apology. I've been difficult, questioning everything you do, making you prove yourself over and over. That wasn't fair." "It's okay," Marcus began, but Diane held up a hand. "No, it's not okay. I told myself I was just being thorough, protecting the company's interests. But the truth is, I didn't think you could do this job. And that wasn't based on evidence, it was based on assumptions I didn't even realize I was making." She met his eyes. "I was wrong. You're not just capable, you're exceptional at what you do. This restoration is going to be something special." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, Diane. That means a lot." She extended her hand, and Marcus shook it firmly. "I'd like to learn from you." Diane continued. "Your approach to community engagement, to training apprentices, it's different from how we usually operate, and it's better. Would you be willing to share your methods with the rest of the team?" "Absolutely," Marcus said. "I'd be honored." After Diane left, Marcus sat down on a dusty crate and let himself feel the full weight of what had just happened. He had earned her respect, not through connections or credentials, but through the quality of his work and his refusal to compromise his values. That evening he called Eleanor to tell her about Diane's apology. "See," Eleanor said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I told you the work would speak for you. It helps to have you in my corner." Marcus admitted. "I don't think I could have survived that board meeting without you." "You would have," Eleanor said. "But I'm glad I could help. That's what friends do." Friends, the word had become so much more than a label. Marcus and Eleanor had developed a bond that transcended professional collaboration. They talked every few days, sharing updates about work, about Lily, about Eleanor's physical therapy progress. They had dinner together once a week, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Lily, comfortable in each other's company in a way that felt like family. And Lily had become the bright center of both their lives. She visited Heart Technologies almost every day after school, doing homework in Eleanor's office, drawing pictures for the entire team, asking a million questions about everything from building codes to wheelchair design. The staff had adopted her as an unofficial mascot, and Lily soaked up the attention with her characteristic joy. One afternoon in late March, Eleanor was reviewing accessibility compliance reports when Lily appeared at her desk with a drawing. "This is you," Lily announced, showing a crayon picture of a woman with long auburn hair standing on a mountain, arms spread wide. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. "Lily, sweetheart, I can't climb mountains anymore." "Not yet," Lily said with absolute certainty. "But you will. You're getting stronger every day. I can tell." "How can you tell?" Eleanor asked gently. Lily tilted her head, considering. "You smile more now, and you stand up sometimes when you're working. And Daddy says you're the bravest person he knows, so I know you can do anything." Eleanor looked up sharply. "Your daddy said that?" Lily nodded vigorously. "He says you fell down but you're getting back up. And that's what brave means. Not being scared. Everybody gets scared, but doing hard things even when you're scared." Later that evening, after Marcus had taken Lily home, Eleanor sat alone in her office, staring at the crayon drawing. Lily had seen her not as she was now, but as she could be, as she wanted to be. For the first time since the accident, Eleanor allowed herself to imagine climbing again. Not Eagle Ridge, never Eagle Ridge, but maybe smaller peaks, maybe with proper adaptive equipment, with people she trusted, with acceptance that her body was different now, but still capable of remarkable things. She called Marcus. "Lily told me what you said," Eleanor said when he answered. "About me being brave." There was a pause. "She wasn't supposed to tell you that." "I'm glad she did," Eleanor said, "because I want to tell you something about my accident, about what really happened." "You don't have to." "I want to," Eleanor interrupted. "I've been hiding from it for 2 years, and I'm tired of hiding." She told him everything, about her mother's death 6 months before the accident, about being so consumed by grief that she had stopped caring about her own safety, About deciding to climb Eagle Ridge alone despite knowing it was reckless, despite the weather warnings, despite every safety protocol that said solo climbing was dangerous. About standing at the summit and feeling nothing, no triumph, no joy, just emptiness. About starting the descent and not really caring if she made it down. About the moment her footing slipped and she fell, tumbling down the mountainside, and in those terrible seconds before she hit the ledge that stopped her fall, actually feeling relieved that it might be over. About waking up in the hospital paralyzed and realizing she had survived, and the crushing guilt that she had done this to herself, had chosen recklessness over responsibility, had thrown away everything her mother had sacrificed for her. I climbed that mountain hoping to feel something, Eleanor whispered, tears streaming down her face. And instead I destroyed myself, and I don't know how to forgive myself for that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment after she finished. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "That took real courage." "I don't feel courageous," Eleanor admitted. "I feel broken." "Eleanor, listen to me," Marcus said firmly. "You're not broken. You made a choice when you were drowning in grief, when you couldn't see any way forward. That doesn't make you reckless or weak, it makes you human. And the fact that you're still here, still fighting, still trying to build something meaningful, that's courage, that's strength." "How did you do it?" Eleanor asked. "After Jasmine died, after being left alone with Lily and all that debt and all those closed doors, how did you keep going?" Marcus took a shaky breath. "I didn't at first. For months I was just going through motions. Getting Lily to school, looking for work, coming home, repeating. I was numb, hollow. And then one day, Lily asked me if Mommy was proud of us, if Mommy would be happy with how we were living." He paused and Eleanor heard the weight of memory in his silence. "And I realized that if Jasmine could see us, really see us, she wouldn't want us just surviving. She'd want us living, trying, finding joy where we could. So I made a choice. Every morning, I choose to live. Some days that choice is easier than others. Some days it's the hardest thing I do, but I keep choosing." "I want to choose that," Eleanor whispered. "I want to live again, not just exist." "Then do it," Marcus said gently. "One day at a time, one small choice at a time. And Eleanor, you don't have to do it alone. That's what friends are for. We remind each other why it's worth fighting. We celebrate the small victories. We show up." "Marcus." "Yeah? Thank you, for seeing me when I felt invisible, for being exactly who you are, for letting me be part of your and Lily's life." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for giving me a chance when no one else would, for believing in me, for being the kind of person who uses her privilege to lift others up instead of guarding it. You're changing my life, Eleanor, mine and Lily's both." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the phone line carrying their shared understanding, their mutual respect, their chosen family bond that was growing stronger every day. "Get some sleep," Marcus finally said, "and Eleanor, keep that drawing Lily made. Because one day, maybe sooner than you think, you're going to climb again. And when you do, I want to be there to see it." William Hart returned to Seattle in early April after another extended business trip to Asia. He scheduled dinner with Eleanor at his favorite restaurant, the Metropolitan Grill, without asking if she was available or interested in seeing him. Just sent a text, "Dinner Thursday at 7. I have things to discuss." Eleanor almost declined, but something in the wording, "things to discuss," made her curious enough to say yes. They met at the restaurant, and William stood when Eleanor arrived, his expression carefully neutral as he took in her forearm crutches, the improved mobility she had not told him about because they barely spoke anymore, beyond necessary business communications. "Eleanor," he said, kissing her cheek stiffly, "you look well." "Thank you," she replied, allowing a server to help her settle into the booth. "How was Singapore?" "Productive," William said. "The expansion is ahead of schedule. Hart Technologies now has operations in 17 countries. They made small talk through appetizers, corporate updates, Seattle weather, surface-level pleasantries that danced around everything that mattered. Then William cleared his throat and set down his fork. "I've been reviewing the Historic Preservation Division reports," he said. "This Marcus Wright, the Paramount project is progressing remarkably well, ahead of schedule in fact, and under budget." "I told you he was talented," Eleanor said. "You did," William acknowledged.
I also understand you've been spending considerable time with him and his daughter. Dinners, weekends at your apartment, people are talking. Eleanor felt her spine stiffen. Let them talk. Marcus and Lily are my friends. William's expression hardened slightly. Eleanor, you need to be careful about how you're perceived. You're the heir to Hart Technologies. Every decision you make reflects on the company. Every relationship you have gets scrutinized. What are you really saying, Dad? Eleanor asked, her voice dangerously quiet. William hesitated, then leaned forward. I'm saying that a friendship with an employee, particularly one who comes from a very different background, raises questions about favoritism, about appropriate boundaries. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me, Eleanor repeated, her voice flat. From what exactly? From having meaningful relationships with good people, from being treated like a human being instead of a corporation. That's not what I meant. Then say what you mean. Eleanor interrupted, her anger rising. Because it sounds like you're uncomfortable that my friend is black and works in construction. It sounds like you're more concerned about appearances than about the fact that Marcus Wright is one of the most decent human beings I've ever met. William's face flushed. Eleanor, you're being unfair. I have legitimate concerns about your judgment. My judgment. Eleanor's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it, but the intensity remained. Let me tell you about judgment, Dad. My judgment told me that Marcus deserved a chance when 17 other companies rejected him for racist reasons. My judgment told me that Lily's kindness on my birthday when I was alone and miserable because you were in Tokyo closing a deal you deemed more important than your daughter, mattered more than corporate protocols. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. My judgment is the reason the Paramount restoration is succeeding. My judgment is the reason we're building something that actually matters instead of just extracting maximum profit. And if you can't see the value in that, if you can't appreciate what Marcus and Lily have brought into my life, then the problem isn't my judgment, it's yours. William opened his mouth, then closed it. For a long moment they sat in silence, the tension between them thick and painful. I lost you, William finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. When your mother died, when you had the accident, I lost you, and I didn't know how to get you back. So you didn't try, Eleanor said, and the hurt in her voice was raw. You just kept working, kept building your empire, kept prioritizing everything except the daughter who needed you. I didn't know how to help you, William said, and for the first time Eleanor could remember, her father's voice cracked with emotion. You were suffering in ways I couldn't fix. Your mother was gone. You were in a wheelchair, facing a future that looked nothing like what you'd planned. And I'm a businessman, Eleanor. I solve problems with money and resources and strategy, but I couldn't solve grief. I couldn't solve paralysis. I couldn't solve losing the life you'd built. Tears gathered in Eleanor's eyes. I didn't need you to solve anything. I just needed you to be there, to sit with me, to show up. I know, William whispered. And I failed you. I failed you when you needed me most. Eleanor wiped at her eyes with her napkin. Marcus Wright showed me more genuine kindness in 5 minutes than you've shown me in 2 years. He helped me when I was alone and hurting. He never asked what I could do for him. He just showed up. And you know what's truly disappointing? You can't understand that because you've never done anything without calculating the return on investment. The words hung between them like an accusation. William stared at his untouched dinner, and when he looked up his eyes were damp. You're right, and I don't know how to fix that, but I want to try. Tell me how. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, surprised by the vulnerability in her father's voice. Start by meeting Marcus and Lily as actual human beings instead of problems to be managed. Learn their story, see what I see in them, and maybe examine why your first instinct was to warn me away from the best friendship I've had in years. All right, William said slowly. I will. Will you give me that chance? Maybe, Eleanor said. But Dad, actions matter more than words. Show up. Actually show up. Not as CEO of Hart Technologies, but as my father. I will, William promised. I'll do better. Eleanor gathered her crutches to leave. When you're ready to really meet Marcus, to see him as the talented, kind, extraordinary person he is, call me. Until then I don't think we have anything else to discuss. She left without waiting for a response, her heart hammering, tears of anger and grief burning behind her eyes. But beneath the pain, she felt something else. Liberation. She had chosen her values over her father's approval. She had defended her friendship with Marcus and Lily, and it felt right in a way. Nothing had felt right in years. William Hart did not call his daughter for 3 weeks. But he did something Eleanor would not learn about until much later. He started paying attention. First, he reviewed every report about the Paramount restoration project in minute detail. He noted Marcus's innovative problem-solving, his attention to community input, his ability to anticipate challenges before they became crises. He read weekly progress updates that showed the project consistently ahead of schedule and under budget, despite the apprenticeship training program Marcus had implemented. He attended a board meeting where Diane, the senior project manager, who had initially questioned Marcus's capabilities, presented a glowing assessment of his work. "Mr. Wright has exceeded every expectation," Diane told the board. "His restoration approach is both technically sound and community-centered. He's training a new generation of craftspeople while delivering exceptional quality. I recommend we consider him for permanent hire, well before the trial period ends." William noticed that the other board members nodded in agreement. Even Harrison, who had questioned Marcus's background in January, remained silent. But what truly began to change William's mind happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late April. He had cleared his schedule unexpectedly, a rare occurrence, and decided to visit the Paramount construction site unannounced. He wanted to see with his own eyes what Marcus was building, wanted to understand why his daughter was willing to damage their already fragile relationship to defend this man. The theater was a hive of controlled activity when William arrived. Workers moved purposefully through the space, and the transformation was already visible. The exterior had been cleaned, revealing beautiful Art Deco details that had been hidden under decades of grime. Through the open doors, William could see the interior taking shape, scaffolding everywhere, the sound of careful restoration work echoing through the space. He found Marcus in what had once been the main auditorium, now stripped down to its structural bones. Marcus stood with a teenage boy, no older than 18, clearly nervous, hands shaking slightly as he held a trowel loaded with plaster. William watched from the shadows as Marcus positioned himself beside the boy, his voice patient and encouraging. "You've got this, Jeremy," Marcus said. "Remember what I showed you, smooth, even pressure. The plaster wants to cooperate with you, let it." The boy, Jeremy, attempted to apply the plaster to a section of damaged molding. His hand shook, and the application came out lumpy, uneven. "I'm messing it up," Jeremy said, frustration evident in his voice. "You're learning," Marcus corrected gently. "Nobody gets it perfect the first time. Here, let me show you again." Marcus took his own trowel and demonstrated the technique slowly, explaining each motion, each adjustment. Then he stepped back and let Jeremy try again. This time the boy's application was smoother, more controlled. "There you go," Marcus said, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "See, you're a natural. This building has waited 70 years for proper restoration. It can wait another 5 minutes for you to get it right. No rushing, just patience and practice." Jeremy tried again, and gradually his confidence grew. By the 5th attempt, his work was passable. By the 10th it was actually good. "Perfect," Marcus said. "You just learned a skill that most people don't even know exists anymore. Traditional plaster work is an art form, Jeremy. You're becoming an artist." The boy stood taller, pride evident in his posture. Really, Marcus confirmed. "Now, I want you to practice on this entire section. Take your time. If you mess up, we'll fix it. That's how you learn, by doing, by making mistakes, by trying again." As Jeremy moved to start his practice work, Marcus pulled out his phone and made a note. William was close enough to see him typing Jeremy, showing real potential with plaster work. Consider for advanced training program. Then Marcus noticed William standing in the doorway. "Mr. Hart," Marcus said, surprise flickering across his face. "I didn't know you were visiting today. I should have called ahead," William admitted, stepping into the light. "I wanted to see the project for myself." "Of course," Marcus said. "Would you like a tour?" For the next hour William followed Marcus through the Paramount, listening as Marcus explained every decision, every restoration technique, every way he was honoring the building's history, while making it functional and accessible for the 21st century.
Marcus showed him the foundation repairs, the helical piers that had stabilized the structure without damaging historic masonry. He showed him the HVAC system being installed behind decorative soffits where it would be invisible to theater-goers. He showed him the accessibility features, the gently sloped aisles, the elevator disguised within the original service shaft, the assisted listening system wired throughout. This isn't just about meeting ADA requirements, Marcus explained as they stood in what would become the main seating area. It's about creating a space where everyone feels welcome, where someone using a wheelchair or someone who's hard of hearing can attend a performance with dignity, without feeling like an afterthought. William studied Marcus's face as he spoke and saw genuine passion there, real commitment to something beyond profit or personal advancement. "Why does this matter so much to you?" William asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. "My wife Jasmine was an architect. She used to say that buildings are stories made of brick and steel and wood. They hold memories, shape communities, reflect our values. When we restore a historic building, we're not just preserving structure, we're preserving the story of who we were and who we want to be." He gestured around the theater. This building meant something to people. First dates happened here. Families celebrated here. Artists performed here. When it closed, a piece of the community's story was lost. By restoring it, by making it accessible and welcoming to everyone, we're saying that everyone's story matters, that the past and the future both have value. William found himself nodding. Eleanor believes that too, about everyone's story mattering. She does, Marcus agreed. That's why she's remarkable. She defended you quite forcefully to me, William said, watching Marcus's reaction. When I expressed concerns about your friendship, Marcus met his eyes steadily. "I'm aware. She called me after your dinner. She was upset." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that you're her father and you love her, even if you don't always know how to show it," Marcus said. "I told her that parents make mistakes, and she should give you a chance to do better if you're willing to try." William felt something crack inside his carefully constructed walls. "You defended me, even though I essentially accused you of improper motives." "You're protective of your daughter," Marcus said simply. "I'm protective of mine. I understand that instinct." They stood in silence for a moment, and William thought about Eleanor, about the years he had missed while building his empire, about the times he had chosen conference calls over dance recitals, business trips over birthdays, professional success over personal connection. He thought about Sarah, his late wife, who had begged him to slow down, to be present, to remember that family mattered more than any corporate achievement. He had promised her he would change. And then she had died, and he had worked even harder, because work was something he could control when everything else was chaos. He thought about the opportunities he had been given, the loans based on handshakes and family connections, the second chances after failures, the benefit of every doubt, simply because he looked like what success was supposed to look like, and had come from the right background. Marcus had not been given any of that. And yet here he was, not bitter, not angry, but lifting up the next generation, teaching Jeremy not just a skill but self-worth. "I owe you an apology," William said finally. Marcus looked surprised. "Sir, I made assumptions about you based on nothing but prejudice and fear," William continued, the words difficult but necessary. "I looked at your background, and saw risk instead of value. I questioned your friendship with my daughter because I couldn't understand why someone like you would help someone like her without expecting something in return. And that says everything about my limitations and nothing about your character." He paused, forcing himself to continue. "I've spent my life building an empire, made millions of dollars, earned respect from people who matter in business, but I failed at the only thing that actually matters, being there for my daughter when she needed me most. And when she finally found people who were there for her, I tried to drive them away because they didn't fit my narrow definition of appropriate." Marcus was quiet, listening. "Eleanor told me you showed her more genuine kindness in 5 minutes than I've shown her in 2 years. William said, his voice breaking slightly. "She was right, and I'm ashamed of that." "Mr. Hart, please let me finish," William said. "I'm sorry for doubting you, for being suspicious of your friendship with Eleanor. for letting my prejudices blind me to what my daughter could see clearly, that you're a good man doing extraordinary work. Thank you for being there for her when I wasn't." Marcus absorbed this, and when he spoke his voice was gentle. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Hart. What matters is whether we're willing to do better." "I want to do better," William said. "I want to be the kind of father Eleanor deserves, the kind of man who deserves to be in her life. Will you help me learn how?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Yes, sir, I will." They shook hands and something shifted between them. Not instant friendship, but the beginning of mutual respect. "Would you and Lily join Eleanor and me for dinner?" William asked. "I'd like to meet your daughter properly, and I'd like to try again with my own." "We'd like that," Marcus said. "Thank you." As William left the Paramount that afternoon, he felt something he had not felt in years, hope that maybe it was not too late to repair what he had broken, to become the person his wife had believed he could be, to show up for his daughter in the ways that actually mattered. The Paramount Theater's grand reopening was scheduled for a Saturday evening in early June, exactly 7 months after Marcus had started the restoration project. The community response had been overwhelming. Over 500 people had registered to attend, longtime Seattle residents who remembered attending shows at the Paramount decades ago, accessibility advocates eager to see the adaptive features Marcus had incorporated, architecture enthusiasts drawn by the historic preservation, and Pioneer Square community members who had watched the building transform over the past months. Local news stations had sent crews. The mayor was scheduled to speak, and Eleanor, standing backstage in a deep blue dress that matched her eyes, was using only a cane tonight, a milestone she had worked toward for 7 months. Dr. Patricia Morrison had warned her to pace herself, to have her wheelchair available as backup, to remember that 7 months of physical therapy was a triumph but not a magic cure. Eleanor's mobility was improved but not perfect. She could walk short distances with a cane, could stand for presentations, but prolonged standing or walking still exhausted her, and her legs sometimes trembled with the effort. But tonight she wanted to walk, wanted to stand at that podium beside Marcus and show everyone, including herself, how far they had both come. Marcus appeared beside her, looking uncomfortable in a fitted black suit, pulling at his collar. Lily bounced beside him in a lavender dress, with her hair styled in intricate braids woven with silver thread. "You look beautiful, Miss Eleanor," Lily announced solemnly, "like a princess." "So do you, sweetheart," Eleanor replied, then looked at Marcus, ready, terrified. Marcus admitted, "What if I mess up my speech?" "Then you'll mess it up in front of 500 people who already love you," Eleanor said with a smile. "But you won't mess up, you're going to be brilliant." The curtain rose and 500 people filled the restored Paramount Theater. The space glowed with warm light from the original Art Deco chandeliers that Marcus's team had painstakingly cleaned and restored. The walls showcased repaired murals depicting the theater's history, vaudeville performers, silent film stars, jazz musicians. The seats had been reupholstered in fabric that matched the original color scheme, and the stage curtain, deep burgundy velvet, had been restored to its former glory. And throughout the space, seamlessly integrated, were the accessibility features that made the Paramount not just historic but truly inclusive. Gently sloped aisles wide enough for wheelchairs. Designated seating areas at multiple levels so wheelchair users could choose their view. Assisted listening systems. Braille signage. Accessible restrooms that felt like part of the historic design rather than awkward additions. Eleanor walked out to the podium, actually walked, one step at a time, leaning on her cane but moving under her own power. The audience erupted in applause, and Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. She reached the podium and gripped it for support, catching her breath. Marcus joined her, and they stood together for a moment, letting the applause wash over them. Finally, Eleanor raised her hand for quiet and leaned toward the microphone. 7 months ago, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I made a decision to start using the resources I'd been given to create something meaningful. To stop hiding from life and start building something that mattered." She looked out at the crowd, finding her father in the 3rd row, Lily beside him holding his hand. "This theater represents more than architecture. It represents what becomes possible when we choose fairness over prejudice, when we invest in people rather than just buildings, when we create spaces that welcome everyone."
She turned to Marcus. 7 months ago, I offered Marcus Wright an opportunity that should have been offered to him years earlier. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because he was the most qualified person for the job. And he proceeded to exceed every expectation, to build something extraordinary, and to train the next generation of craftspeople along the way. Marcus stepped forward to take the microphone, and Eleanor moved to stand beside him, sharing the podium. Thank you all for being here, Marcus said, his voice carrying through the beautifully restored space. This building has a story that spans almost a century. It's seen vaudeville acts and silent films, jazz legends and rock concerts. It's been a place where this community gathered to celebrate, to grieve, to experience art together. He paused, emotion evident in his voice. When the Paramount closed 30 years ago, part of that community story was lost. Tonight we're reclaiming it. But we're not just preserving the past, we're building a future where everyone belongs. Where someone in a wheelchair can attend a show with dignity, where someone who's hard of hearing can experience a performance fully. Where history and inclusion enhance each other. The applause swelled again, and Marcus had to wait for it to subside. Eleanor Hart gave me a chance when others had closed doors in my face, Marcus continued. She saw my work, not assumptions about who I was or where I came from. This building is proof that when we choose to see each other's actual capabilities, when we judge people on their merits rather than their backgrounds, we create something beautiful. He gestured around the theater, but this isn't just my work or Eleanor's vision. This restoration was a community effort. The apprentices you see here tonight, he indicated a group of young people sitting together in the front section, learned traditional craftsmanship techniques while working on this project. They're the reason we could restore the decorative plasterwork authentically. They're the reason this building will have caretakers who understand its history and care about its future. Marcus's voice grew stronger. This theater now belongs to everyone. It's accessible, welcoming, and honors the community it serves. It's proof that we can honor the past while building for the future. That historic preservation and inclusion aren't opposing goals, they make each other stronger. The standing ovation lasted over 2 minutes. People were crying, including many of the elderly residents who remembered the Paramount from their youth. The apprentices Marcus had trained stood together, clearly overwhelmed by the recognition. After the ceremony, as guests toured the theater and sampled refreshments from local caterers Marcus had hired, William Hart approached Eleanor and Marcus together. He had changed over the past 2 months since their difficult dinner, not dramatically, but noticeably. He smiled more. He asked questions instead of issuing directives. And he had developed a genuine friendship with Lily, who called him Grandpa William, with the easy affection of someone who had never learned to be impressed by wealth or power. Eleanor Marcus, William said, his voice warm. This is extraordinary, truly extraordinary. Thank you, Dad, Eleanor said. William turned to Marcus. Mr. Wright, I'd like to discuss making your position permanent. I know we agreed on a trial period, but frankly that feels insulting at this point. You've more than proven yourself. I'd like to offer you a permanent position as Director of Historic Preservation and Adaptive Building, with a salary of $120,000 annually, full benefits, and the autonomy to build your division as you see fit. Marcus's eyes widened. Mr. Hart, I thank you. Yes, I accept. Good, William said, shaking his hand. Because we have 17 other buildings in various cities that need your expertise, but more importantly, I want you to help me with something else. What's that? Marcus asked. I'm stepping down as CEO of Hart Technologies, William said, and Eleanor's head snapped toward her father in shock. Effective in 6 months, Eleanor will take over. Dad, Eleanor began, but William held up his hand. Let me finish. I've spent my entire life building an empire, and in the process I neglected what actually mattered, being present for my daughter, using our resources to make real change instead of just accumulating more wealth. He looked at Eleanor with something that might have been tears in his eyes. You've shown me what Hart Technologies could be, not just a profitable company, but a force for good. I want to spend whatever time I have left making amends, doing work that matters. What kind of work? Eleanor asked carefully. Medical debt relief, William said. I've been researching it. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America. Millions of families are drowning because they had the audacity to get sick. I want to create a foundation that purchases and forgives medical debt for families who can't pay. He looked at Marcus, like yours, like thousands of others. It's not charity, it's correcting a systemic injustice. Marcus felt his throat close. Mr. Hart, that's incredibly generous. It's overdue, William said. But I need guidance from people who understand what it's like to carry that burden. I'd like you on the Foundation's advisory board, Marcus. Will you help me do this right? Marcus looked at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, sir, I'd be honored. William smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern face. Good. Now where's my granddaughter? Lily promised to show me the murals up close. As William moved through the crowd looking for Lily, Eleanor turned to Marcus, tears streaming down her face. Did that really just happen? She whispered. I think so, Marcus said, looking equally stunned. Your father just offered to forgive medical debt for families like mine, and made your position permanent. Eleanor added. And put you on his foundation board, and called Lily his granddaughter. They stood together, watching William kneel down to Lily's level as she enthusiastically explained every detail of the mural she had helped design, a section showing diverse families of different eras enjoying performances at the Paramount. We did something good here, Marcus said quietly. Not just the building, but everything else. Your father is changing, the apprentices have new skills and hope for their futures. The community has their theater back. And you and I, he trailed off, and Eleanor finished the thought. We found family when we needed it most. Yeah, Marcus agreed. That Eleanor linked her arm through his, a gesture of friendship, of solidarity, of chosen family bonds that ran deeper than blood. Thank you, Marcus, for singing to me on my birthday, for seeing me when I felt invisible, for letting me be part of your and Lily's life. Thank you, Marcus replied, for giving me a fair chance. For using your privilege to open doors instead of guarding them, for being the kind of person who turns pain into purpose. They stood together in the beautifully restored Paramount Theater, surrounded by a community celebrating not just a building but the possibility of change, and felt the weight of what they had built together. Not just a restoration project, but something far more important. Proof that kindness ripples outward, that using privilege responsibly can transform lives, that chosen family matters as much as, maybe more than, biology.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.